LinkedIn is a powerful tool for B2B businesses, and in our space, a whopping 88% of engineers and technical buyers find LinkedIn to be either somewhat or very valuable. So it's no surprise that TREW Marketing works with our own clients to leverage the LinkedIn platform. Today, you'll hear from a TREW account director of how clients have found success leveraging LinkedIn as part of their marketing strategy. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, TREW Marketing. TREW is a full service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hey everyone, well, I'm here with Erin Gleason, Account Director for TREW Marketing, and today she and I are going to discuss how TREW clients leverage LinkedIn as part of their marketing strategy. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thanks, Wendy. I'm excited to be here today.
I'm super excited to have you, and I know that you and I both share a love of dogs and cats, and I'm bringing this up because those of you watching the video may see, I don't know if you can see this big old scratch on my nose. Can you see that?
A little bit.
I got swiped by the kitty.
I've had a couple of times because we had a puppy last year where I've had to use makeup a little bit strategically to cover up where she just pawed me in the face or got a little too excited. Life as a pet owner.
How are your pets doing today?
They're great. It's a little bit of a gloomy day over here. The dog didn't want to get up, but she's pretty happy overall. I took her on a run yesterday and the poor girl still has her winter coat. So she is not used to it being like 70 something and humid. She faded before I did, which is not typical at all. So
well, we'll
have to reacclimate her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, cool. Well, let's dive in. And before we go into these examples that you've compiled for us, how does LinkedIn just in general fit in with the overall marketing mix for TREW clients?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a really powerful tool in a bunch of different ways, but the main way that we see clients using it on the marketing side is really content promotion. A lot of them are using it kind of the same way you would use email, where you're reaching a targeted, often an audience. With email, they actually sign up. With LinkedIn, they are following you. And they're using it to promote, evergreen pieces of content, events, even behind the scenes information to kind of just continue having those touch points with a relevant audience who is pretty much already signed up for it. So it's kind of like keeping your leads warm, essentially. And then a couple other clients will augment this in other ways, and they will, use it as a employee tool to really motivate their employees, share more behind the scenes information, kind of cultivate that community feeling. And then of course, others will use it more with paid advertising to reach new leads. So those are kind of the main ways that we see people using it.
Okay, good overview. So let's dive into some of these examples that you've put together. Let's start with number one.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to give a little bit of background around who the company is, anonymized, what their overall goals are for specifically LinkedIn, not for their entire marketing program, but for the LinkedIn pieces of it, and then kind of run through what we saw in terms of results. And for all of these, I believe I pulled in before results just so we had a kind of comparison metric, because it's always a little bit more helpful, I think. So this first one, it's a startup. We've been working with them for about a year. They are a startup in a field where the reining technology is about 100 plus years old. It's very dominant. They're very disruptive technology. So a lot of their challenges as a company are around, first of all, building awareness, because again, they're a small company and some of their competitors are these huge multi-billion-dollar global corporations. So it's gaining that awareness that there is an alternate approach. They've got, 12 plus differentiators over the dominant tech, including things like core overall performance and reliability. They really are a better choice. without being a higher price. So there's a lot going for them, but there's also a lot against them in terms of just having such substantial, robust competitors. So a lot of their goals are around awareness, and then just creating that credibility so that people know that this is a real technology, it's proven, it's not some experimental thing. So with LinkedIn, we've done a lot of work building up just their overall marketing, overall press. And specifically for LinkedIn, we actually haven't done advertising for them. We've focused completely on their actual company page and then also on employee engagement. So we've built up, the basics of their page. We filled out all the information. We made sure the branding was there. We've done messaging for them. We made sure that carried through on their LinkedIn page. They redid their website recently. We've, made sure that the content matches the design. So all of the basics just to make sure it feels cohesive. And then on top of that, we've been posting regularly some of their content, some of their evergreen stuff, some of their press, just to make sure that we kind of have that baseline of content and that they have a good public showing. But the real differentiator in why they've been successful is that their executives have gotten really involved in this strategy. So again, I've mentioned a lot of their goal is around thought leadership and credibility. Their president and their VP of BizDev have a little competition going to see who can drum up more engagement and more support. And this has worked really well. So they've both been able to really establish themselves as thought leaders. They come from the industry. They've already got that network there, and they've actually been able to push a lot of traffic, not just to the company LinkedIn page, but to the website. And they've been able to drum up a lot of followers and a lot of interest and engagement. And then on top of this, we also did an employee training. So we kind of taught their employees the basics of just setting up your profile, of the information that they should have, what they could pull from that was corporate, and then just gave them some tips on like resharing posts and engagement, just to kind of get everyone doing this legwork. So yeah, pretty robust, not a lot of anything other than that in terms of advertising, but I'll give you some results on this. So we started focusing on LinkedIn in June of 2020. The first half of that year, they had 409 LinkedIn followers. They saw an average of 23 website referrals from LinkedIn each month, so not a whole lot of traffic. And then by the end of the year, again, this was a big focus, and this was a big focus of their execs, they had 871 followers, so they more than doubled within 6 months. And we saw an average of 168 referral visits to their website each month.
It's a big increase in 6 months.
Yes, exactly. It became a huge, huge source of referral traffic for them, of really qualified, visitors. And some of them, converted it to new contacts that weren't previous in the database. Yeah. So it was really successful in terms of creating that awareness and engagement and just visibility for the company and for the executive team.
And, those numbers, people can take metrics different ways, but knowing which company you're referring to, it's a startup that's really relatively unknown in the industry and a very niche-y product, right? There's an infinite number of people that are going to be interested in this. So to have those sorts of numbers is very impressive. What I find also interesting, Erin, is, we're here in the middle of this March LinkedIn Madness mini series. And one of the things that kept coming up in previous episodes is the idea that the spokesperson for the company should play a really active role in driving engagement on LinkedIn. And so the company page, you still see people follow company pages and look for content, but really that gold is in those spokespeople getting active. So I think that stands out as a success of this for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's harder to attribute just overall awareness to LinkedIn, but this is just a piece of their overall marketing mix, like we mentioned. They've been doing a lot of work with PR, with web, with their messaging, with investor marketing, and they've seen huge increases in just overall traffic to their website and overall leads that they've generated for the products that they are selling now. We've seen, a lot more press coverage and more substantial press coverage. So I think all of it works together, and it's definitely not LinkedIn by itself. It's not in a silo. There's a lot of different elements that have been working towards it, but it's been really interesting to see how it's been a prominent piece of this. And it has really led to kind of cultivating this awareness and credibility.
Yeah.
So.
I imagine, knowing some of our other clients, not every technical executive is bought into spending their personal time on this. And I'm making an
Yeah.
assumption here that it's those executives, not true marketing behind the scenes posting, right? They're doing it themselves. It's very authentic. Is that the
Yeah,
case, Erin?
that's the case. Yeah, we post to their core company page,
Mhm.
but it's really those. Really, it's two individuals. Like I said, it's their president and their vice president who are making really engaging posts. And I will say it helps that they're both very bought in. You know, the president has the patents on all this technology. He's the one who has to really get down there and sell kind of the value of the technology to investors and to potential customers. And the vice president's responsible for actual sales and really drumming up interest in this solution that they're providing.
Yeah.
So this is just one of the many ways that they've really kind of dug in and got their hands dirty, but it's much more successful than, you know, one of our more generic company posts driving to content, because we're not there. We're not behind the scenes. We can't talk about the journey that we had to this product. We can't share photos of the team working on it or the first time the prototype arrived. And that's stuff that they can do. And that's been really, really effective in getting people to really engage with this brand.
Yeah. And it's definitely not something an intern can easily do, even if they are on site
No,
either. So good
no,
point. Great.
nope. They need that access and they need to be enabled to do all of this. So again, it's a lot easier if you're kind of in the leadership of the company than it is for other people. But, you know, if you equip your marketing manager to do some of this, they can be just as successful driving some of that awareness.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, what else do you have for us?
All right, this next one's a little bit more typical of how our clients use LinkedIn advertising specifically. I always like to say when people come to us for ads, first thing I ask about is the goal. It seems a little silly to spend a bunch of money, which LinkedIn ads can sometimes be pretty expensive. It seems silly to spend that money if you're not getting tangible leads, because you know you're paying for website clicks, you're paying for awareness and visibility, and those metrics just don't mean very much. So this company is a large global company. We work with one specific division. They make electronic components, and we work with them on content development and promotion. A lot of those topics are around like 5G, RF, stuff like that. So when we ran this LinkedIn ad for them, it was lead generation and new contacts in that topic area for that, you know, RF 5G topic. And the specific audiences, I believe they did it by persona. They kind of added their personas in there and crafted messages for them. So we used a piece of content that's now evergreen. It was pretty new at the time, but it was just a white paper, you know, covering RF filtering for 5G applications. It's still up on their website today. This was, you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And as for the results, it was a very, again, targeted reach, driving people to this white paper. It was a very simple ask, you know, here's the topic, download it. And the content was published about 5 months before the ad ran. It had received in that 5 months 31 total form submissions and led to 18 new contacts. This ad ran for less than 2 weeks, and it generated 53 submissions and 50 new contacts. So for companies who want to reach that new audience and who have a really enticing offer, this doesn't work with every piece of content. There's plenty of content that just is not that engaging to an audience who doesn't know you. But for this white paper, it was general enough, it was valuable enough, and meaty enough that it was a really good offer to reach those new people in that very targeted audience and convert them into known leads.
Yeah, 53 new leads in 2 weeks. I would say that's a big success right there with an evergreen piece of content that already existed. I find it interesting that you mentioned so you did organic posts with the content first before moving to advertising, right?
Yeah, and there were a couple other promotion tactics in terms of, you know, putting on the website. I actually don't know if this one was in like an email newsletter or anything, but those are kind of the typical things that we would do.
Yeah.
It got a little bit of traction. And I mean, when you look at the metrics report, it goes from like a very small line that spikes up during that 2-week period when all of these people engaged with it very quickly. So you can see this is a good example of a short-term ad. It didn't run for very long. It got a lot of engagement. So it spent its budget really quickly, but it also hit its goals really quickly. And it ended up being a huge contributor of actually reaching the goal for that white paper in terms of drumming up new contacts and submissions.
Erin, on a previous episode during this series, I brought on a LinkedIn advertising expert and I was asking him, what's the minimum budget to be able to get traction and have an impact? And I get the feeling from his response that he's working with perhaps larger companies than this example that you're providing, this particular division. So, he felt like 5,000 is a good budget. And I was like, I know we've been working more with 500 to 1,000. So I'm curious if you could share
Mm-hmm.
a budgetary range that you feel is worthwhile when you're going to this really targeted audience. Like you mentioned, what is an
Yep.
electronic component for 5G? That's pretty nichey.
Right. It's pretty specific. Yeah. So that specific ad in, like I said, a little under 2 weeks, spent just under $500.
Okay.
And again, it's
a good data point.
That was, a good spend for that short time period with so much activity. Most people, when it's only one ad version, could, kind of expand that 500 maybe out to a month. Again, if you're getting a lot of traction, you're going to run out of budget. Some people will aim for more like the 750 range. I will say for one ad version, 1,000 with our really niche audiences tends to be a little high. They don't spend that money. And if you're doing 2 ad versions, you're A/B testing, or you're running 2 different personas, that's where I really suggest having $1,000 budget for a month-long period, because otherwise it's going to be too limited to run those 2 different campaigns.
Okay, good data point. And when I think about the cost per lead that was achieved by that 2-week campaign, that's fantastic.
I have that also. That is under $12 per new contact.
Wow, that's insane.
Right, which is fantastic. And we've run these before with other companies where, again, the content wasn't as compelling.
Yeah.
And that jumps up to $500 per lead because they got 1 new contact or 1 new lead, or $90. So it's important to try a couple different things and really think about what your offer is, and also maybe keeping it that short time period just to see if it gets traction before you spend your entire budget on a piece of content that just really isn't engaging, because we've seen it kind of pan out both ways.
And that's the incredible thing about these digital tools is you can monitor in real time and use these metrics to tweak things or to pull out early or double down, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's just not something that was available to marketers, come 20, 30 years ago when I started out. So I love it. Not 30 years
game.
yet. I'm not there, but I'm past the 20 mark. So I remember back in the day.
I still remember when I started in PR measuring the physical amount of text a mention got in like a print newspaper or magazine for impressions. And there was like formulas on how many impressions 2 inches were in a certain circulation. Yeah, it's come light years since then. We actually have meaningful numbers now.
Yeah. And ours at trade shows would be, okay, scan any badge. It doesn't matter. It could be the janitor. It could be like the people across the hall that just want the little Chotsky, just scan every badge. And the cost per lead was still like $300 or something.
Oh my gosh.
Even with those people.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Okay. What's next? I know you have another one for us.
Okay. Yep. This is my last one. So we've gone over using kind of an organic strategy with a lot of employee engagement. We've gone over LinkedIn advertising for an evergreen piece of content. This one is going to be LinkedIn advertising for a time restricted event.
Okay.
So thinking of like a webinar, a live event, a conference. This happens to be a little bit different than our typical client. So they are a global company. We work with one specific division, and they are a online data repository. It's a technical, kind of educational site. And they have this data set repository where people can upload their research, and it's accessible to be searched by students, by other people doing research, by the general public in a lot of cases. But the data set storage is something that, you can go down a whole rabbit hole on, but there's a lot of different pricing options and capabilities. And anyway, so their goals are a little bit different than our typical client. They go for things like increasing their daily users, because again, this is a newer solution where there are already existing solutions. They're trying to drum up usage of it and awareness of it. So a lot of their goals revolve around kind of the baseline usage of it and awareness of it. So daily users, cumulative users, and then of course, data set uploads. So if there's no information there's no one's going to go visit. So they really key into how many of these data sets they're getting uploaded. So our account director worked with them to increase this number of data sets, and she actually introduced a data set competition. So this was again, time restricted event. They had, 2 months that they would publicize it or something like that and try to drum up these entries. And then there was a prize at the end for the winning entry that, got the most views or whatever the metric was. But they introduced this and they used LinkedIn ads as one of the ways of attracting attention. So looking at the ads, they actually ran 2 ads back to back in different time periods. So in 2019, they had about 340 data sets uploaded throughout the entire year. During this campaign, which was the very beginning of 2020, the first ad led to 40 new data sets. The next led to 52. So this campaign alone of 2 ads back to back generated 92 submissions, which was more than a quarter of all submissions from the year before. So that immediately shot their numbers up 27%. And because of the data set competition and other stuff that they were doing, they more than doubled their submissions for that year.
Wonderful. What a great idea to run a contest around this.
I know it wasn't me. I wish I could take credit for it, but it was a great idea, and it's still, being run to this day. They do kind of these quarterly contests, and it still drums up a lot of interest and engagement.
So why do you think it did so well? Is it, as you said, the time sensitive nature of the offer?
It's the time sensitive, and I think it was also reaching, again, that very relevant audience. And that's why I like LinkedIn so much when it comes to advertising. Google ads are fine. They can be really good in some situations, but I think the real value of LinkedIn is that you can sit there and say, I want to look for people who studied these certain niche topics like semiconductors. There's nothing else that you can target to studied semiconductors. You can have interest in Google, but it's a little bit different. And so you can really get to that very technical audience you want. That's completely not possible in things like Facebook.
Yeah.
And it does such a good job of reaching people based on not just location and not just things like degrees and job titles, which I never use because every job title is different, but it lets you really get through to like, what specifically did they study? What are their skills in? What is their experience level? Am I reaching directors or am I reaching interns? Like, I don't want to reach interns, let's exclude them. So you can get really granular with that information where you don't have that in other platforms. And I think that's what helps this be so successful is they really got specifically to researchers, which would be a hard group to target in a lot of other tools.
Absolutely. It would be on your own database or maybe working with a media partner, but this is another avenue that perhaps people don't think of. So, well, these are excellent examples, Erin. I know we could probably just sit here all day and talk about the ways, different ways true clients are using LinkedIn, but just real quickly, are there just other ways that come to mind or other goals that clients have where they've found success on LinkedIn?
Sure. So we covered marketing ways that people use LinkedIn. There's also plenty of business use cases. We've had a client, I've certainly been reached out to on LinkedIn via prospecting. It's not my favorite way of being reached out to, but we had a client in their specific industry. They saw a lot of success by just making these really just authentic connections with people in their industry, starting conversations, interacting with them and going, hey, here's what we do. If you want to talk about it, let me know. They were able to drum up continuously several meetings a week, which is crazy. Very small company, 2 salespeople. And this was kind of a continuous stream of new leads and like sales qualified leads, people who are opting themselves into talking to a salesperson. I haven't heard a lot of stories of people being that successful with prospecting on LinkedIn, but I think it was just the way they went around it, where it was very personal. It was the guy himself connecting to somebody and making that real connection and not coming in hot with a, hey, here's what we do. Are you interested? Just starting with smaller messages and
no one wants that.
Getting to know someone. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
People just tune those out.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting
Erin,
to see.
Earlier in this series, you'll have to go listen to Susan Tatum's episode. It's called Stop the Sales Noise. And her biggest pet peeve is the automation technology that's being abused by these salespeople, right? Where they send a mass amounts of connection invitations and then it has that generic response. And I get inundated. And I always, if I added them as a connection and then I get one of those auto responses, I immediately remove them. It's so annoying and ineffective. So your advice mirror image.
It makes sense. I mean, it is noise right now, and it's breaking through via marketing and in your sales outreach. So thinking about how you make it really relevant and personal, and like, why do people care? And I think that's a thing that nobody, or not nobody, but a lot of people don't ask that. They are sitting in their own company. They think it's the most important thing in the world. They think it's great and everyone loves it. But why does your customer, or why does the person you're reaching out to, care about it? And I think this company did a really good job of that, of
Right.
making it about like a mutual engagement. Hey, here's what we do. Tell me more about your company. Oh, that's great. I'd like to talk about that. So some of it too was them forming partnerships and them finding vendors for certain things. So it wasn't just sales. Again, it was connection based, and really getting to know people in the industry who could be customers, but could also be a supplier or could be a partner.
It's a good frame of mind.
So,
how can I form a
yeah.
partnership? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one good example of a business case. And then the next one is TREW's. LinkedIn has kind of its jobs platform. We actually recently hired a marketer who found us via LinkedIn. He was not in our network. He didn't previously work for a technical company, but we were looking for a very specific HubSpot focused role. So we were able to go outside of that technical kind of a pool of candidates. And he found us through LinkedIn, and he's been a fantastic addition to our team. And I'll note, that's actually how I found TREW 4 years ago. Was through
Is
LinkedIn.
it really? I didn't realize that, Erin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we've got 2 people on the team who found TREW via LinkedIn job postings. That's why I always post to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm like, I found it this way. So if we want people who don't already know about us and we want to go outside our typical avenues a little bit, it's a good resource for that.
So I know a lot of people talk about how for B2B companies, Facebook is kind of the place where you can put company culture. In LinkedIn, you're more offering, your B2B type of content, but you just talked about recruits looking at LinkedIn as well. So is there a place for culture post as well, so that you're feeding that goal?
Yeah, definitely. We always will sit down when we're really thinking about social strategy, and we'll kind of identify who those core audiences are. Same thing you would do with a website, where if you're really trying to get investors, you're going to have really robust content about your team background and what your technology does, and just kind of shoring up some of the more team related pieces than the technology related. Because an engineer and an investor, and an engineer and a potential candidate, are looking at very different things. So we think about that with social. And if people are really looking for, hey, we're trying to grow our team 20% in the next year, we need to really be reaching out to these younger engineers. We need to be engaging people with certain skill sets. We do kind of factor that into their social strategy and say, okay, great. We're going to want to make sure that you've got really strong culture information on your page, whether that's a good selection of behind the scenes photos from your team, and maybe you're sharing your community volunteer days, or your team get-togethers, or whatever it is that you do that's related to your culture. Let's make sure we're including that. And there's also the opportunity to kind of build that out on the job side. I know they're introducing a lot in terms of employee engagement once employees are there, for bigger companies, where you can have like an employee hub. So LinkedIn is very aware of this being a big area of growth going forward. But yes, we definitely factor that in and think about, if you're trying to attract job candidates, let's not focus on just technical information. Let's put some softer things in there that kind of show who you are as a company, and not just what information you produce.
Great. And it all goes back to, like you said, your business goals, and that tied it up with a nice bow there. You don't jump straight into LinkedIn strategy without having that overarching view. So
right, exactly. It's not a one size solution. You kind of have to tailor it for what are you specifically trying to achieve, and then let's even pick the channels, because there's certain people we've done this with where pretty much everyone's on LinkedIn. I feel like LinkedIn is a requirement at this point. Not everyone's on Facebook, not everyone's on Twitter, not everyone's posting videos to YouTube and has a really robust YouTube strategy. So we kind of will pick and choose based on goals and what people are trying to do, to say, you know what, like, you're trying to attract younger engineers, you're trying to really build yourself up as a technical expert, you're going to want to really invest in more video. So we'll kind of go a level deeper and do it by platform as well, and then frame out content and personas by the platform for who they're trying to reach and what they're trying to do.
Okay. Well, Erin, this was a wonderful wrap up of all of the things that we covered in previous episodes, whether you realize it or not,
Nope.
on this mini series. It's great. Putting it all in action and showing results. So I appreciate you pulling together those examples and sharing those today. If listeners want to connect with you and learn more, where can they go?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of Erin Gleasons and a lot of Erin Moores, which is my married name now. But if you look up Erin Moore in TREW Marketing, you can find me, or Erin Gleason Moore is kind of the URL. Of course, I'm on TREW's website, so if you want to just learn more about me in that capacity, you can look up, my bio, my blog posts, things like that. But yeah, that's the easy ways to find me.
Great. And I guess finally, any parting advice for marketers looking to either put a toe in or just improve how they're leveraging LinkedIn?
I would say, and I've kind of said this before, but your LinkedIn efforts are really only as good as the content you're sharing. So if you're sharing a white paper that nobody cares about, you could have the most robust strategy, you could have a great post for it, but if it's not a topic people are interested in, they're not going to do anything with it. So I think it's really thinking about what you're sharing and put the effort into developing great content, and it'll make the promotion piece and the engagement piece so much easier and more successful.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Erin. Appreciate you being on today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Wendy.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.